Platania. Welcome to the Fantasy Grimoire. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Scars Beneath a Serpent's Scales has exploded onto Bookstagram, BookTok, and anytime I open any social media, it's all I'm seeing. People are reviewing it, they're loving it. And I just wanted to know, for those that don't know, who would you say is your ideal reader for this story?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. That is so kind of you to say that you're seeing it everywhere. I'm so happy to hear that. This story is definitely written for people who are fantasy readers who like a lot of lore and a little bit more world building. Maybe I know there are some fantasy romance books that focus more on the romance. This one definitely has a lot of the fantasy aspects as well. And people who love mystery. So if you grew up on Nancy Drew, if you love Criminal Minds, if you love any type of mystery show or book, there's a lot of that in here because it is a murder mystery mixed with fantasy. So you get a really fun genre blend. But then it's also for people who love a slow burn romance, the kind that you like feel their emotions, really feel them in your chest. That is the kind of book that this is. And that's the kind of reader we're looking for.
I love that. I'm just watching how you light up when you describe it. Like I really feel that, and I've just started reading it as well, so I'm excited to get stuck in. But this isn't your debut. You've also got another complete series, The Curse of Ophelia.
Mm-hmm.
How is that different from Scars Beneath the Serpent Scales?
Yeah, so I do think that they have a lot of things in common, things that I kind of like to think of as my little author stamp that I put into everything I write. And that's going to be, the mental health representation that we get, the emotion that we get, the character studies that are within the pages. All of that is going to be in all of the books that I write. Same with the mythology. I love lore and mythology, and I take a lot of inspiration, particularly from Greco-Roman mythology. That's going to be littered through all of my stories. But The Curse of Ophelia definitely is a bit more of the epic fantasy scale, especially with Scars as the first book in the series. That one focuses more on the murder mystery. The Curse of Ophelia has the big epic battles, it has the wars, it has the quests and the curses and the hunts for magical items and all of those things that lend themselves a little bit more maybe towards epic fantasy readers. They still have the romance, they still have the slow burns, they still have the love confessions that are going to have you giggling and kicking your feet and all the things that are going to make you cry. But yeah, I think that readers can enjoy both of them, or you can enjoy one or the other.
I relate to what you're saying there because there are certain things that you will find through my books as well where I love to play with the idea of no one is perfect and we can all do terrible things despite our circumstances. And what does that road to forgiveness look like, or are we really not redeemable? And that's something I love to play regardless of the book series. So I get what you're saying there. You specified romantic fantasy, but I
Mm-hmm.
hear readers talking a lot about romantasy, romantic fantasy. Everyone's super opinionated about this definition. So, what is it about the romantic fantasy genre that specifically called to you when you set out to write these stories?
Yeah, well, first of all, I know that everyone has different definitions of how they're going to define it. To me, and I think what has become fairly standard is the first word is an adjective. So the second word is the main part of the genre. So romantic fantasy is going to have a little bit more emphasis on the fantasy side because it is the romantic part is the adjective. Um, and then fantasy romance tends to be a little bit heavier on the romance. Romantasy is where things get kind of muddled and confusing.
Yeah, I
But
totally agree.
I always identify my books as romantic fantasy because I do think they tend to have a little bit more focus on the fantasy. Like I said, they are going to have a lot of world building, they are going to have a lot of mythology. There is still a lot of romance throughout them. Like I would say that Scars has a little bit more romance than The Curse of Ophelia in terms of how it's woven so intricately into the plot and it is so necessary to the plot. I don't want to give anything away. Whereas The Curse of Ophelia, that one is a little bit more on the fantasy side, in my opinion. And again, readers will have their own opinions. Some people will say it's the perfect 50-50 split. Some people will say there's not enough romance. Others will say that it leans more romance. Everyone has different definitions. I think my books fall into romantic fantasy, where there is just a tiny bit more fantasy than romance, but the romance is still very important, especially in the new series. And I love that because I love that you can do both. I love blending genres, as is evident from what I've done. Um, I love that you can have books that are about this like world ending type of love, but you can also get the magic and the dragons and all of those things that are also so fun. I just love to do both.
I mean, isn't being an author one of the fucking coolest jobs in the world? I mean,
It really is.
the fact that we can create these worlds from our head and like stories we tell, I don't know, just listening to you explaining and I'm just like, damn, that's cool.
Yeah, we can do whatever we want with it. Like, it's totally up to us. Even in a series, every book can be kind of different. I'm working on the second Fate Swarm book right now, and that one is definitely very different than the first. And you just see how things evolve. And I think that that's so fun.
I want to talk about that for a second, because, and I had this debate with my editor once, especially let's say when you're writing a trilogy. Book one is the easy part because you're creating a new world and you're introducing it to people. Fine, fine, fine. Then you got book two, and I say to my editor, if I give you the characters at the same place as book one, and there's absolutely no growth, the reader's going to be like, well, what am I reading? Like, what's the point? But in that, I find that it's inevitable that you're always going to disappoint someone because like they build up this idea in their head of where the story can go, and when your book doesn't match that,
Yeah.
it's disappointing for them. And like I had this now with my one series last year where book two, I was so proud of it, like so proud, and I was like, this is the best work I've ever written, storytelling's fantastic, you know, it just checked all the boxes. And I got a mixed reaction from it. And it's specifically hard for me that way the people that rated it 5 stars for the first book and then 4 stars, which is still a good rating. Like it's still a really good rating. But like for me, I'm like, why was it not good enough for another 5 stars?
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask, being an experienced author, how do you approach something like this and not let it psych you out and stay true to your story?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually something I've been thinking about a lot recently, like I said, in writing book two, and something that has been giving me a lot of mental blocks. And I just have to keep reminding myself that there are going to be people who like book one better than book two. There are going to be people that like book two better than book one. There's going to be people who like book three better than both of them. So I just have to keep reminding myself of that and really following the intention that I had when I set out to write the series. This is a 4 book series, and I had them all at least loosely outlined before I even started book one. So I knew exactly where we were going in each book. I knew where I needed to get the characters by the end of book one, by the end of book two, etc. So I'm sticking to that. And I have to remember that I am being true to the characters, true to their story, true to the vision that I had. And that stuff can always shift along the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't need to be exactly as I intended years ago when I first started to think of it. But that's what I have to constantly remind myself. And that, you know, some readers, especially with something like the Fatesworn Saga that starts out with the murder mystery book, it's not going to be the same murder mystery in book two. That
Yeah.
would just not make any sense. So something like that, where I'm like, okay, well, maybe someone who that was their favorite part of book one, they maybe won't love book two as much, but there's going to be something else that they love about it. And someone else is going to love something different about book two. It's so hard to talk about it without giving things away. And that's what I just keep telling myself.
So I episode one of this series of the podcast, I had to put massive spoiler warnings on it because I had read The Poisoned Daughter before the episode. So we spoke massive spoilers throughout the episode. And so many of my friends started messaging me and they're like, well, we haven't read it yet. Now we can't listen to the episode and we're dying. So so maybe not having spoilers it makes it more accessible for everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like what I find so interesting as well. So the second book of my series, I remember reading this one review. I've since stopped reading reviews because, like, to protect my
Yeah.
own mental health, I just had to.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it was so funny because Pincole's episode at the end of season 2, she was saying that no matter how thick-skinned you are, you have to stop reading the reviews. And I was like, no, I'm thick-skinned. I can handle it. Yeah. If I ever meet her again, I will say you are allowed to say I told you so because not reading reviews is literally the best thing I've ever done for myself. Let's move on to my favorite part of the episode. What's your bookish hot take?
Okay, I had to think about this because I think any trope can be done well. And a lot of people will disagree. A lot of people say XYZ trope is always going to be awful. That's your personal opinion, and you can ride with that as long as you want, and that's totally fine. I think any trope can be done well if it just depends on how the author writes it. I mean, for the Curse of Ophelia has friends to lovers, which so many people hate, and then they read the Curse of Ophelia and they're like, oh, maybe I do actually like this trope. And I was like, see, if you gave it a chance, you might like it. That is one that I will always swear by. I think that it just depends on how it's written sometimes. And that
So
doesn't mean tropes that like are triggering things in
yeah,
any way. I don't think those should even be considered tropes. Like, I'm not calling like a cheating trope. I put that in quotes because I don't really think that's a trope, but something like that maybe necessarily doesn't need to be done well, but a tried and true trope like an accidental pregnancy or friends to lovers, or again, I don't really consider it a trope of miscommunication. I think that's very important in writing and in showing people learning to communicate. So I think all of those can be done very well.
so wait, when did we start hating friends to lovers?
Yeah,
Like,
so many people can't stand it. They're like, oh, it's not enemies to lovers. I don't want it. And I'm like, well, give it a chance.
yeah, like okay, wow. I mean, the joke that I have is my husband and I are friends to lovers. I mean, we it was not a love at first sight scenario. We were friends for a good amount of time, and now here we are, 15 years later. So I don't know, friends to lovers holds an appeal to me. I guess you can say I'm biased that way.
Yeah, it can work out. See?
Yeah. Most fantasy authors work in Easter eggs, which is a very standard literary plot device into their series, myself included. And while I'm still busy reading your book, I have a feeling that you're no different. So I have a two-part question. Number one, are there any undiscovered ones that none of your readers have picked up yet? And if so, can you give us a hint?
There are, I think a few readers have figured out some things, especially, between my two series because they do take place in the same world. So I think a few readers have figured out some things. I don't want to give any hints for those because they
Yeah.
are very fun for people to discover on their own. I will say that there are tons of Easter eggs for the Curse of Ophelia in Fatesworn 2. Again, without giving anything away from the first book, we are going to see a little bit more of the world in Fatesworn 2. And since they're in the same world, they're not chronologically happening at the same time, but there are a lot of Easter eggs in book 2. They're not Easter eggs that if you don't pick them up, nothing's going to change in terms of your experience reading the book. But I do think they're very fun, and I had a lot of fun writing them. I actually have been plotting and planning Fatesworn when maybe I was halfway through the Curse of Ophelia series. So I knew that all these Easter eggs were going to make it into this book, which has just been such a fun payoff for me to write. So there are a ton in the second book. So I know a lot of readers have found me through Scars Beneath the Serpent Scales, and if you are interested in the Curse of Ophelia, again, if it's not your cup of tea, that's totally fine. But if you are interested in it, now is a really fun time to go back and read it before we get book 2. So I will leave you with that.
So the Curse of Ophelia, for example, if I don't read that series, it's fine. But so are they interconnected series? Like it just makes the world bigger, or
yeah, they're so Fatesworn chronologically takes place a few years after the Curse of Ophelia is over. The plots are completely independent. There's not even like character crossovers or any, like there's no cameos, nothing like that in the first book of Fatesworn. You will get some cameos down the line in the series. So as I say to people, the only spoiler you'll get about the Curse of Ophelia is you'll know X, Y, and Z character didn't die. You'll know maybe who they end up with romantically, that sort of thing, because it's chronologically after, but you won't get any of the plot spoiled. So yeah, they're completely independent.
I know I've seen a massive rise in, I would say, the universe that authors are creating, and my go-to reference is Cassandra Clare, what she did with the Shadowhunters. I think we all inhaled that series when we were teens.
That's what I'm doing. I'm heavily inspired by what she did.
Have you read The Ascended yet by Lennox and Greenwich?
I have not, but I've seen it everywhere.
Okay, so it was easily one of my top reads of 2020. I loved seeing their transition because they were indie and they've now since gone track. And I hadn't read their first series, which was Riftborn and Dustbound, which had been released up until that point. And I went in straight to The Ascended, where they were like, technically you should read The Ascended third, but like you can still read it standalone. There's just a massive like spoiler at the end of The Ascended that connects it to the other series. And by that point, I had seen enough on social media to put two and two together what the spoiler was. I since read it afterwards. But I'm loving this trend that I am seeing of this universe that authors are creating, because sometimes we're not ready to say goodbye to the characters. Like, give us more. And it's the most nostalgic thing from Shadowhunters days.
Yeah, that has always been my plan since even before I wrote The Curse of Ophelia. I've been building a universe just mentally and in my notebooks, and now we're finally getting to the point where I can talk about it a little bit more. I mean, I know Fatesworn and The Curse of Ophelia are in the same worlds, but there will be other worlds. We'll go to many other places, and then we'll do some more in this world too. So I'm really excited about all of that.
I reference Victoria Aveyard a lot because I love what she does on her podcast, Plot Twist. And I've seen them discussing it where a lot of authors are starting to set boundaries with reviews. I know we spoke about this briefly earlier, but the question that she was asking is that have authors become too sensitive in this endeavor? And I wanted to hear what your thoughts were on that.
I don't think so. Personally, I don't think it's a sensitivity issue. I don't think it's any different than people have been feeling for decades. I think that we are so much more accessible now than authors ever have been in the past. And I think that's an issue, truly. I mean, it's wonderful to be able to connect with readers, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a boundary issue.
Yeah.
Because we're so accessible online, because it has become such an important part of this career to be accessible online and to have social media and market our books. And we do like to be face to face as much as we possibly can. You know, putting ourselves out there on the internet is really difficult, and we do it. And then that opens up room for critique. And I think that that's where the lines get blurred. So I don't think it's too sensitive. I think that, you know, we have our editors, we have our beta readers, we have those people that give us feedback. Yeah. And we take it and we work with it and we shape the story into what it's going to be. And we don't necessarily need to hear the reviews after that. So I think that we are just way more accessible than authors ever have had to be in the past. And there are good things to that and there are bad things to that.
Yeah, so my favorite example with my latest release, so it was a different series to the one I was talking about earlier. I had a very mixed review or reactions to that series because I marketed too hard. So, you know, when you cast that net too wide and I write super niche, you get a little bit of backlash along the way, which is fine because I still wouldn't change the story I wrote. It was something I was very proud of. And it's how I found Mags, which is how I found you. So, like, it all worked out. But I specifically had one reviewer come into my DMs telling me she hated the book. I didn't even deserve 1 star. And if I want, she can send me a list of all her issues. And in future, she's happy to beta read for me. And I was like, you know what? I said to her, oh, and then she was like, she can hold back on the review if I wanted to. So I said, no. I was like, I don't get to dictate how you review. Like, that is, for me, I don't think that is fair. If you want to go in with a 1 star, pop off, go wild, okay? I was like, all you could have done was say to me, the book wasn't for me. That's it. The book wasn't for me. And walk away, okay?
Or say nothing to you. She didn't have to go into your DMs and tell you that she didn't like it.
And then she got offended that I wouldn't change anything. And I was like, so let me get this straight. A literal stranger on the internet has a problem with my story. And now you're getting offended because I'm not going to go in and change my published book to your liking.
Especially as an author, that is just, it messes with your head so much. And as humans, we are predispositioned, at least everyone I know, to listen to the negative critique more. You can have 25-star reviews, but you're going to hear that 1 star way louder than anything positive people are saying. And I mean, personally, I like reading my 5-star reviews. I like reading the good ones. My PA actually collects some of them for me so I can go read them. So I don't have to go on Goodreads to read them or anything. But still, the 1 stars will be so much louder.
Yeah, it's actually so true because my hook as an author is I write urban fantasy set with like the CW kind of 2010 era. So like the Vampire Diaries, your Gossip Girl, all of those are my things.
Love all of them.
Well, this is why Mags wanted me to speak to you, because my latest release, which is the one that she read, Legion of Pride, it's a Criminal Minds and Dexter comp. Okay.
Yeah, she was telling me about it when she was reading it.
And I'm like, I love this wave that I'm seeing of more and more like 2010 media coming up, because I think it was such a feel good era, and I want to see more of it, because for me, like, TV and movies are just not hitting the same, and if I can get it in books, that would be amazing. So yeah, for me, I have a solid vision of where I'm going as an author, and reading those reviews, it's just fucking with my head, man. I had to stop.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I
now
totally agree.
my PA as well, also one of the gifts I gave myself, I hired a PA, best thing I ever did. And she's handling all of that stuff for me so that I don't have to, and I can just focus on writing the story.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, and I think figuring out your author brand is so important and so helpful. And that's not to say, like, if you want to write both contemporary and romantasy and dabble in other genres, like you obviously can do that, and many authors have done that. But I feel like figuring out, like we said earlier, like that stamp of what's always going to be in your books or what you want to put out there can be so helpful. Like, I've really discovered through Fatesworn that I love entwining murder mystery, or just mystery in general, into my romantasy books. And that's something I'm going to continue to be doing, because it was so fun for me as the author. And I'm happy it's resonated with people, but regardless of that, it was such a fun writing experience for me. And it makes it, and like, I'm so excited to talk about it,
Yeah.
that I think that is so helpful. So like you said, with the CW brand that you're intertwining in there.
I want to shift a little bit to the enemies to lovers, friends to lovers that we were briefly speaking about earlier in this episode. And we know that enemies to lovers is one of the most popular tropes out there, arguably.
Mm-hmm.
But you went for a slightly different take. You went from reluctant allies to lovers. Why was this specific distinction important for your story?
One, it's in the marketing. I don't want people to go into it expecting enemies to lovers, because Emmeline and Mormar are not enemies to lovers. And if you're looking for that, you're probably going to be disappointed. So general PSA, they're not enemies. Also, it just doesn't work with the dynamic and the setup of everything. You know, they're forced to work together to try to solve a murder, and that can happen with two enemies, but then there's all the questions of, okay, why are they enemies? What's that divide that they can't cross? You know, they're not from warring kingdoms or something, so they're not enemies in that regard. They're just, they don't want to work together because they both prefer to work on their own. They both have a lot of secrets that are keeping their walls up, so that also adds to them being reluctant. And his reputation is that he's this very reckless warrior, and she's like, I can't work with that. I do order, and that recklessness is going to mess with my process. It's going to mess with me achieving my goals. So they just didn't feel like enemies. So that's why I very distinctly say reluctant allies.
Okay, so my next favorite part, because this is how I discover some of my favorite reads, at least of recent. What is one fantasy book that you believe deserves far more hype from the community than it's been getting?
Okay, can I give you two?
Yes, you may. Go for it.
Okay. The first one is, well, it's a series, but the first book is called Daughter of the Dead by K. Jamila. And that is such a good epic, like it's a truly epic fantasy. The writing's phenomenal. The world building, like, is so impressive. There's so much cool lore. And if you are a fantasy reader who really likes making theories about what's going to happen, this is such a good book for you. Two of them are out so far. I think it's going to be a 5-book series, if I'm correct. I'm not positive on that. I just had the pleasure of alpha reading book 3, and it's the best in the series so far, and it's just a draft. So I need everyone to hop on this series. So the first book is called Daughter of the Dead. The series is called the Remnants of Rage series, and it follows, in book 1, you're following 3 different female protagonists, and the fun part for me about book 1 is trying to figure out, like, how they're all going to overlap and where all the different threads are going and all of that. And she does great stuff with, like, just the complexity of her characters is amazing, and I cannot recommend that one enough. And then another series, the first book is out. It's called Ballad of Whispers. It's by KB Elizabeth, and that one is another one where she does her characters so well. And it's definitely a character driven book, but the world building is so impressive. I cannot say enough good things about that one also. And I do find a lot of readers say that if they like The Curse of Ophelia, they think that you'll like Ballad of Whispers. So definitely want to shine a light on both of those because they are both so good. I mean, I don't get a ton of time to read, obviously. I think a lot of authors have that problem where we find ourselves not getting enough time to enjoy reading as a hobby anymore. Um, so I'm the same way where I'm looking for something new.
It's a few years ago I was reading on average 50 books a year. Now at this rate I'm lucky if I get 20.
Yeah, I honestly stopped tracking.
Yeah. Well, on the review thing, I only know this because I actually moved my reading tracker from Goodreads to Storygraph just because I was so adamant about not going in to read reviews anymore. And I didn't want like any temptation because it's so tempting. Click on author dashboard, boom, there's everything for you. So I see now on Storygraph I can see those things, and I'm just like, huh. I mean, I just finished reading Diabound the other night, which it's weird. Like I had such conflicted feelings about it because it took me a really long time to get into that one. I almost DNF'd it because it it was a weird start for me, and I was just like, I'm not gelling with it. So I sat on it for a few months, but once I got into it, I was like, okay, 5-star read. I want to talk about your events. You have a very full schedule of events in the coming months, including an international one. Just before this episode, I was actually seeing they're starting to announce more and more the Romantasy event in Scotland next year. What do you consider when deciding if an event is right for you, and what do you hope readers get at these events when they're meeting you?
It's a really good question. When it comes to which events I'm attending, I will typically look at the history of the event runner or the organization that is putting on the event and what their sort of just like how they run it, what their reputation is, and everything of that sort. Because I do know that there are a lot of authors who have been burned in the past couple years with events maybe not following through, or and sometimes it's out of their control, but sometimes it does come down to a person putting on an event who maybe didn't have the proper experience. So I definitely look at that, and I look at the how they're marketing the event, who they're marketing it to, um, and what readers they're trying to attract. An event that is focused on more contemporary authors or readers is probably not going to be as good of as a fit for me as one that is focused on romantasy.
Yeah.
Or one that focuses on dark romance is probably not going to be as good of a fit for me as romantasy, or things like that. So those are the what I'll consider when I'm choosing which events that I think I should attend, and also word of mouth, other authors who have attended and how their experience was. That's huge for me. I'm attending Imaginarium next month for the first time, and that one comes so highly recommended to me from author friends who have attended in the past. And really for that one I said great, if they want to invite me and I have this many friends who loved it so much, I will absolutely attend. And I was lucky enough to get the invite this year, so I'm very excited for that. When I meet readers, I just want them to walk away with a pleasant experience, whether it's because we're talking about my books, whether it's because we're talking about something completely random. I want them to just have a positive experience and to walk away thinking that they got whatever they needed out of that conversation. Like I said, be it a book recommendation, whether they purchased a book from me or just heard a little bit about my books and are going to look them up on Kindle Unlimited later, or anything of that sort.
So you were at a Polycon, weren't you? I'm pretty sure I saw some.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, last.
So I was seeing a little bit of discourse online with Tracy Dion. I'm a huge fan of her Legendborn series, and the social media user put the video up, and then she very quickly took it down because Tracy Dion just signed the book and then like moved away, and they're saying like, "Oh, Tracy Dion's so difficult," and I'm like, guys, she's been standing there for 8 hours signing books.
I want readers to have a pleasant experience, but I do also want them to remember that at the end of the day, authors are people, and we, like anyone else, experience a million different emotions a day. And you might catch us in a moment where we're tired and we need to yawn. And that doesn't mean that you're boring us. It just means that maybe we've been up for 12 hours on our feet or something. And I just hope there's a little bit more grace some people, but also, with that conversation that was overtaking social media, there were so many people backing up authors, which is always very reassuring to see. I mean, I know that I can sometimes get very socially anxious.
Mhm.
So I do worry sometimes that in a situation, I will be really quiet. I mean, even when I'm with my closest friends, I will be the quiet one of the group. And I'm always like, oh, I hope that doesn't come off as rude to readers if I'm quiet. Like, that's not what it is at all. And I do worry about that as well, that I'm not talking enough and engaging enough. And I'm like, that's just me, though. That's just how I am. I mean, I'm just a little bit more quiet in groups. And I hope people don't think that that's rude or dismissive or anything of the sort, because that's not what it is.
Yeah, so just on your point, in Amsterdam, we have two big events, I would say, in our region next year, Spellbound being one of them, and Romantasy, the Romantasy Con being the other. Because I didn't write Romantasy, I didn't even bother with that one because, as you were saying, it's just not a fit for my story. Sure, I have romance subplots, but like Legion of Pride, I don't know what the opposite of romance is, but that's what that story is. I mean, like they're practically on the verge of divorce in that one. And I always knew that Spellbound was going to be a fit for me, but I don't like, I'm not a dark romance writer. So like I'm somewhere in between the worlds where I do write dark, but not on that level. Like I've seen some really wild shit. So it was quite interesting for me trying to get in for Spellbound as one. I was actually shocked when they accepted me for that reason. And the owner Elba, she was saying that what's different with the Amsterdam one versus the New York one, where it originally is that she's gone with like a mood reader kind of approach for this one, where you can find something of everything.
Oh, I
And
love that. I do
yeah,
love that.
and I was like, okay, now I'm actually feeling a little bit better. But at the same time, I'm like, I have never stood in an event for 8 hours straight for 2 days in a row, might I add. It's not just the one day.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this, do they like me enough? And I'm that person of I said the first thing that comes out, which is usually a huge fuck up waiting to happen. And it's like, okay, but then they walk past and then they don't want to buy a book. And it's like, okay, shit. Like it's this whole spiral. And I wish people would realize that this is what authors go through on a daily basis. Yes, we made this choice, but as you were saying, a little bit of compassion goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
As we start wrapping up, I do have to ask, Nicole, what can we expect to see next from you in your author career?
Oh, how exciting. I'm not done with, like I said, I'm not done with this universe I'm building. We have a lot to come in that regard. I don't know what I'm going to write next after Fatesworn. I have a lot of ideas that I'm chipping away at. Like they're begging to be written, but I am very committed to this series, and I will be finishing the series before I do my next thing. So you can expect book 2 in the fall, and then books 3 and 4 when they're done. I don't want to set any dates because I don't know how long they'll take me, but book 3 will definitely be in 2027, and we'll go from there. But yeah, I have a lot of ideas of what I want to write next. Some of them are in this same world that I've been writing in. Some of them are in other worlds in the universe, and I'm excited about all of them. So there's going to be a lot more slow burns, a lot more of the fun, I think, mixing mystery with romantasy. And yeah.
My favorite joke that I have with one of my cover designers is that I am snap up covers like I'm a Pokemon collector, because I'm like, if I decide I want to write XYZ next, I have the cover, and then I'm kind of like going in with the flow for that story. And she has this joke with me. I skipped. So I don't know if you know Sulky Designs on social media.
Yeah.
The best and slash worst thing that ever happened to me. Like whenever she does a pre-made drop, because her pre-mades are
They're really good.
they
They're
are
really
phenomenal. Like she made this joke. She gave a sneak peek of her one earlier this year. And I saw it and I was like, I know that's my pre-made. And she's like, it was a sneak peek. What are you doing? And she doesn't allow early buyouts. The moment the 8 p.m. hit with hers, I messaged her. I'm like, that's my pre-made. And she's like, girl. And I'm like, yeah. And when I got it, I was right. It was my pre-made. And it is so fucking stunning. I have no regrets.
That's so funny. I know a lot of authors who are like that, and they'll be like, I'm sitting on the covers for like my next 4 books. I'm the complete opposite. I can't do a cover until I've written the draft, at least. Like I need to know the story, like really well before I can see the cover. I don't know why. That's just how
I,
my brain
I'm gonna
works.
blow your brain a bit further. I have to write the blurb before I write the story as
I wish I could do that. I wish
well.
I could, because it's so hard.
It's I'm actually one of the authors I'm doing a beta read for now. Um like I'm just saying to her back on the whole romantasy, romantic fantasy debate. I said to her, personally, I don't care. As a reader, you just give me a shit hot fantasy, I'm good to go. But I was like, I know that there are readers in this subgenre that are very opinionated, so I just want you to go in knowing that, and you can't make an informed decision if you don't have all the information. So that's part one. Part two is that we're busy writing her blurb as well. And she was like, "Oh, this is so much easier now with you around." And I'm like, "Yes, because you were far too close to your story. Now, because I've read your story and I can like see what you've maybe missed, it's very easy for you to fix it." That's like why I love doing blurb writing as a two-person job, because what's that saying? You can see the wood from the trees.
Yeah, I know. I've started sending my like blurb drafts once I have a solid one to my editor. I'm like, help me. I'm like, can you please just help me make this better?
Yeah. Well, then, Nicole, if a listener is they're tuned into this episode and they're like, "I'm vibing with Nicole. I want to connect with her. I want to support with her." What is the best way to do that?
Yeah, 100% my newsletter. You can go to NicolePlatania.com and my newsletter sign up is there. I have a Facebook group and a Discord. So if you like either of those platforms, you can join whatever you would like on there. All the links for everything is on my website. And then my social media is by Nicole Platania is my Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, all the things.
Cool. Well, then, Nicole, it has been absolutely incredible speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining today. I
Yeah,
cannot
thank
wait
you.
to see your journey unfold. And here's hoping I can get to Romantasy next year. No
Yeah, it'd be
promise.
so fun to meet you in person.
It totally would. Thank you.
Thank you.